You've been bad, now he's here to take away your Christmas cheer. Krampus, Krampus,
You were sassy.
you talked back. He will put you in his sack. Krampus.
Christmas is ritual. It is a sacred rite for those most devout, a series of practices that, if performed correctly, will bless you with happiness and contentment. Sing the right songs, eat the right foods, adorn your home in symbols and tribute, the parasite plant representing physical affection, stockings hung by the fireplace for the small miscellaneous items, and colorful displays of electric lights to show your neighbors that you aren't Jewish. These things will give you joy, and god damn it, you're just gonna have to deal with the unwanted, uncomfortable realities of bringing your family together, some of whom you may not actually like, into a small space where you can't escape. If you pretend to be happy, then you will be happy. That's the promise of Christmas. Christmas is really absurd if you take a step back from it, full of contradiction. Both religious and secular, with two completely separate mythologies, the birth of Christ versus Santa Claus, each with dozens of variations, abound to their own traditions, their own version of the ritual, now all filtered through a capitalist lens of gift-giving and merchandise. There is nothing wrong with variation, of course. That is, until suddenly celebrating the holiday in the correct manner becomes a moral issue. If your coffee cups don't have the correct holiday-themed patterns on them, well, this is a war on Christmas. It's time to boycott. Morality is hard-coded into our Christmas traditions. There's the whole, Christianity business, but even on the Santa Claus side, you have jolly old Saint Nick making a list of children who have been good and who have been bad, and distributing gifts accordingly. But that's just here in the States. Go out exploring Christmas traditions around the world, and weirder, more extreme versions of judgment and punishment can be found, from beating with switches to putting kidnapped children in a sack and taking them to Spain. And then there's Krampus. A demonic goat man, Krampus is a character from Central European folklore, perhaps predating Christmas, and is now a companion of St. Nicholas, whose job is to punish misbehaving children, whipping them or putting them into baskets to be carted off to hell. He's pretty extreme, and for the longest time pretty obscure if you're not a local, and largely taken off the table during the 20th century. Austria straight up banned Krampus in 1932, but then the internet happened, and with all of human knowledge at everyone's fingertips, Krampus found its way to the States, and really blew up. We all love a good Christmas villain. Ebenezer Scrooge, the Grinch, Jack Skellington. They're popular characters because, at least in part, they disrupt the ritual. They don't do Christmas right and try to ruin it for everyone by ignoring it, trying to destroy it, or trying to make it their own. There's a certain anti-establishment joy in their antics, which is weird to say in the case of Scrooge, who was very much a capitalist establishment figure, but that's another video essay. But these villains are also defeated, either by realizing that they were wrong and embracing the ritual wholeheartedly, or having their antics reversed and the Christmas status quo restored. But Krampus is different. Krampus isn't about disrupting the ritual. He is part of the ritual, at least in some cultures. He is a demon in service of Christmas, the enforcer figure to the holiday season's moral core. He gives a heavy metal edge to Christmas while still technically being in the spirit of Christmas. Of course, as Krampus gained popularity in the 21st century, he is often removed from that context. His demonic visage makes him a prime candidate for the antagonist of Christmas-themed horror films, oftentimes just a vicious slasher monster, or as a force directly opposed to Christmas.
I knew it. Krampus. Vile enemy of Christmas.
As far as I can tell, the only horror film that sees Krampus in his role as ritual enforcer is 2015's Krampus, directed by Michael Dougherty, who also directed Trick or Treat and this year's Godzilla King of the Monsters. The film centers on the Engel family, who are having a very frustrating Christmas as spiteful, antagonistic extended family start rolling into bicker, clash over politics, and largely shit on Max, a young boy who puts great stock into the ritual. He even still writes letters to Santa. He objectively knows Santa isn't real, but continues to perform this part of the ritual. Until this Christmas. This time, Max has been pushed too far by the ritual, by this promise of happiness that never comes, and rips up this year's letter. With this, the ritual is irreparably broken, which invites Krampus. The demon covers the town in a supernatural blizzard and starts sending in waves of monsters to terrorize and kidnap the family. First evil living toys and gingerbread men, then monstrous elves, before Krampus takes center stage himself. As a movie, Krampus is amusing, and actually tamer as a horror film than I was led to believe from word of mouth. The other Krampus horror film projects revel in the shock of violence and gore, but outside of one or two minor flesh wounds, this movie is pretty bloodless. The monsters at hand are more about kidnapping than assault. There are comparisons to be made with fellow Christmas creature feature Gremlins. The practical effect creatures feel akin to the films of Full Moon Entertainment, and there's even a direct riff on Tremors of all things. But Krampus's deceptively cute monster hijinks reminds me the most of the Goosebumps movie. The evil gingerbread men here are virtually identical in function and humor to the lawn gnomes in Goosebumps, and if these both weren't concurrent productions, you could make the claim of one ripping off the other. This is a light horror film that you wouldn't mind your 9-year-old watching, and that's great. We can never have too much all-ages horror. And again, it's the only Krampus movie that actually has Krampus play his proper role as Christmas enforcer. But that's where the film kind of falls apart for me. Krampus and his minions never speak. Their motivations are inferred but never stated directly, which is fine on paper. Force of nature monsters are perfectly fine horror film antagonists. But Krampus delivers a very deliberate punishment, which implies a crime that Krampus is opposed to. Horror movies are often morality tales, either blatantly or through metaphor. The ghost that haunts your house because you didn't respect the dead. The serial killer who preys on youth ruining their lives with drug and sex. The zombies swarming the mall, indistinguishable from mass consumerism. Christmas already has that inherent core of moral judgment, making a list, checking it twice, so horror Christmas movies, which are usually created to be subversive of the holiday, aren't actually that much of a stretch. At first blush, Krampus seems to be critical of the rampant commercialism of the holidays. The film opens with a montage of a violent holiday sale, adults rampaging for toys and expensive gifts, retail employees suffering grave injury, gross amounts of money being passed around while a fight breaks out at the store's nativity scene. A lot of the family bickering is motivated by the Engels' exceptional wealth. They have a very nice home. They make fancy food. They buy their Christmas cookies instead of making them from scratch. This isn't in the spirit of the holidays. This isn't the ritual. But then the movie confuses things. It turns out that the German grandmother was a survivor of a past Krampus attack, which we get to see in a pretty cool animated flashback. But the situation there couldn't be any more different. Instead of wealth, these people are living in extreme poverty. Instead of fighting over politics at the dinner table, they fight over scraps of bread. And still, Krampus comes. Why? Because they didn't perform the ritual correctly? Performing the ritual necessitates spending money. Because Grandma lost the Christmas spirit? Well, you try to look forward to a holiday that you are too poor to celebrate. So I guess the movie is saying, don't get into the consumerist trends of the season, for that leads to ruin, but also flat out don't be poor either. Krampus is the enforcer, but what is he supposed to be enforcing? You might say I'm putting too much thought into it, to which I say, that's what you pay me for, but the film is framing itself as a parable, spun off from Krampus's folklore roots, and parables have morals. Krampus isn't a mindless beast, he is a character doing this for a reason, but he also seems incredibly unselective with his targets. He doesn't just attack the Engels, he attacks the entire neighborhood, even people that were just passing through delivering packages. What did this guy do wrong? Work on Christmas Eve? Don't blame him, blame the company. The film wants to be a scary moral fairy tale, but without being able to pick an actual target, it just ends up being a bunch of puppets bouncing around. And that's fine, that's fun, but it rings hollow in a way I wasn't expecting. I guess the moral here is just perform the ritual. No excuses. If you can't perform the ritual, you deserve to be put in a sack by Krampus. But here's the thing. Fuck the ritual. We're not bound by actual magical forces. We can take Christmas and make it whatever we want. If the lights and the tree and the presents and the music really do make you happy, then knock yourself out. But Christmas can be hanging out with your best friend, drinking schnapps and watching Netflix. Christmas can be line dancing in a barn. Christmas can be getting people together on Discord and playing Dungeons and Dragons. Christmas can be a quiet hike by yourself. Christmas can be with the family you make, not those you're connected to by genetics. Not if you don't want it to be. Or maybe you do want it to be. It's your Christmas. Do what you want. Or don't celebrate Christmas at all. Obviously, if you're of a non-Christian faith, you probably already give it a skip, but you can also skip Christmas because you just don't feel like it. You're not honor-bound to a calendar. If jumping through the hoops, if performing the ritual will cause you pain, will make you miserable, then we shouldn't have to do it. I think we need to make it acceptable to not celebrate Christmas if we don't want to. Depression doesn't go away because it's Christmas. Negative life experiences don't go away because it's Christmas. But if you pull back from celebrating, what do people call you? A Scrooge, a Grinch. You better watch out or Krampus will get you. Screw that. Screw the ritual and screw Krampus. Celebrate Christmas how you want, if you want, and don't you dare feel bad if it doesn't live up to how the media says the perfect Christmas is.